In a hospital, there are rooms for recovery and rooms for observation. But sometimes, in the quiet, sterile corridors of a place dedicated to healing, a story takes root about a room that serves a different, darker purpose. On paper, it's just like the others. It has a bed, a window, and a call button for when you need help. But ask the nurses who walk those halls late at night, and they might tell you a different story. They'll tell you that some rooms aren't meant for the living. This is the legend of a hospital room that makes patients panic, a story that holds a history the administration refuses to acknowledge. The night shift at, let's call it Northwood General Hospital, was usually a predictable rhythm. The squeak of soft-soled shoes on linoleum, the gentle beeping of monitors, the quiet rustle of charts. The nurse who first shared this story was 3 years into a career she loved, and she believed in science. She believed that for every symptom, there was a cause, a diagnosis, a logical explanation. Room 313 was the place that shattered that belief. It started subtly, she said, a feeling you couldn't quite put your finger on, a chill that had nothing to do with the AC. But soon, that feeling gave way to a terrifying, undeniable pattern. The story of the room's unique brand of terror usually begins with a patient we'll call Mr. Henderson. He was a pleasant man in his late 60s, recovering from a routine gallbladder surgery. His vitals were perfect, and he was expected to go home in a day or two. The ideal patient. A nurse settled him into room 313 around 10 p.m., just as the hospital was quieting down. He was calm, even joking about the hospital food. An hour later, his call light blared. The nurse who answered the call walked in to find Mr. Henderson sitting bolt upright in bed, his eyes wide with a kind of primal fear. He was drenched in sweat, knuckles white from gripping the bed rails. He wasn't looking at her. He was staring at the far corner of the room. "Who is that?" he whispered, his voice trembling. "Tell him to get out. Now!" She followed his gaze. There was nothing there. Just an empty visitor's chair. She turned on the main light, washing away the shadows. "Mr. Henderson," she said calmly, "there's no one here." Aye, but he wouldn't look away from the corner. He insisted a tall, thin man was standing there, radiating an almost palpable anger. He was eventually given a sedative. The next morning, the incident was charted as post-operative delirium, a sudden state of confusion common in older patients after surgery. It's a clean medical explanation that includes symptoms like agitation, confusion, and even hallucinations. Except this wasn't a one-time thing. A week later, a new patient, Mrs. Gable, was admitted for pneumonia. The first night, the same thing happened. Her call light flashed just after midnight. A nurse found her hyperventilating, pointing at the exact same corner. She couldn't form words, only panicked gasps. The moment they moved her to a different room down the hall, her panic subsided almost instantly. It was after this incident that the whispers among the staff grew louder. In the break room, senior nurses would talk about 313. Now, one veteran nurse, Maria, told the younger staff that for years, room 313 had a reputation. Patients would become inexplicably agitated, often describing the same thing: a dark, angry presence in the corner. Once you know the story, you start to see things differently. The official explanation was always patient anxiety or medication side effects, but it was always that room. Only that room. The call light for 313 would sometimes go off even when the room was empty. Maintenance would check it, find nothing wrong, and then it would happen again. A housekeeper cleaning between patients swore the faucet in the bathroom turned on by itself. The room was always cold, a deep, penetrating cold that seemed to come from the bed area itself. The nurses started sharing their own experiences in hushed tones. The floodgates opened. One said she heard what sounded like typing in the room when it was unoccupied. Another described how she and a colleague both saw the faint impression of a body on the bed, only for it to vanish when they blinked. They all felt it. They even developed an informal system to keep their sickest or most anxious patients out of that room, a secret kept from management. It's a strange feeling when you realize the place you work, a building dedicated to logic and science, might hold a secret that defies both. It makes you question everything. Stories and urban legends have long circulated in hospitals, places of high emotion and stress. If you find these kinds of mysteries as fascinating as I do, consider liking and subscribing. It's a small, free way to support the telling of these strange stories. All right, let's get back to Northwood General, because the worst part of the legend was yet to come. The climax of the room. 313 legend came with a man I'll call Mr. Davies. He was in his 50s and had suffered a major stroke that left him with severe aphasia, a disorder that impairs the ability to communicate. He was almost completely nonverbal. He could understand simple commands, but couldn't speak. Communicating was a slow process of yes or no questions. Due to a bed shortage, he was placed in room 313. Around 3 a.m., a nurse went in to check his vitals. As she adjusted his blanket, his eyes shot open and fixed on that same dreaded corner. A look of sheer terror washed over his face. He began to struggle. Then, something happened that storytellers claim is impossible. Mr. Davies, the man who hadn't spoken a coherent word in weeks, looked directly at the nurse. His voice was a harsh, guttural rasp, but the words were chillingly clear. "Get him out," he croaked, pointing a trembling finger at the empty corner. "He's standing right there, the angry man. He wants the bed." This was medically implausible. While spontaneous recovery can happen over months or with therapy, a sudden, complete sentence from a patient with severe aphasia is virtually unheard of. The charge nurse came running, and together they reportedly witnessed him repeat the phrase over and over. "The angry man! Get him out!" For the staff, this was the final, undeniable proof. This wasn't delirium. This was something else. Empowered by this, a group of nurses went to their unit director. They laid it all out: the patient accounts, the identical descriptions, the malfunctioning equipment, and finally, the impossible words of the stroke patient. They got nothing. The director suggested they were stressed and spreading ghost stories. She dismissed the stroke patient's outburst as a spontaneous neurological recovery, a 1-in-a-million fluke, and told them to focus on their jobs. They were dismissed. But something did change. A few weeks later, a memo announced that due to ongoing maintenance needs, room 313 was being taken out of patient rotation. Maintenance crews came, but they didn't fix anything. They just moved all the medical equipment out and filled the room with boxes of old files. Room 313 officially became a storage closet. It was a quiet, bureaucratic solution to a supernatural problem. The administration never admitted there was anything wrong. Converting the room solved the issue without acknowledging it. The panic attacks stopped because there were no more patients to have them. This aligns with modern hospital design, which now focuses on creating healing environments with natural light, art, and reduced stress to prevent patient anxiety and distress. But the story doesn't end there. The room might have been decommissioned, but the legend says whatever was in there didn't leave. Nurses needing supplies from the storage closet refused to go alone. They reported the same bone-deep chill the moment they crossed the threshold. Sometimes, late at night, you could supposedly hear things from behind the locked door. A soft rustling, a faint scraping, like a chair being dragged across the floor. The hospital never offered an explanation for the pattern of terror in room 313. The story lives on only in the whispers of the night shift nurses who pass it down. Who was the angry man the patient saw? A former patient who died there, refusing to leave. Why so much rage? These are questions science can't answer, and the hospital was never willing to ask. The room sits there to this day, a dusty, silent monument to a fear that was easier to hide than to understand. It makes you wonder How many other hospitals have a room just like it? A room with a story that's waiting for the right person, on the right night, to finally be told. Until next time, keep the lights on.